which also means great for all of us, as we too are God's people. And thank you for all the reports we have heard tonight from different classes of Sunday school, and the reports of our professionals concerning their visit to the Tibulik tribe in Mandaue, and the burden and the vision that you have given to them to show them another great need in this part of the Philippines. And now speak to us through this important message, and may you help your servant as he explains the meaning of these words. In Jesus' name, amen. Please be seated. We continue our studies concerning our unchanging family values. And in this connection, we are going to talk about Queen Esther's special role in Jewish history. And we read the part of Esther chapter 2, 1 to 18. It's seldom that people in our church study about the book of Esther. It's one book in the Old Testament that is seldom opened and studied. And the Lord has led me in our connection of our theme to study this. Now the story talks about one king in Persia. It's King Ahasuerus, or Xerxes the first. More familiar word than Xerxes, but Ahasuerus is not so familiar. And he was the king who succeeded Darius. So you remember Darius is mentioned in the book of Daniel. And so Xerxes or Ahasuerus reigned in 406 BC until 465 BC. So this was BC, before the period of the Lord Jesus Christ. And the story is written in the book of Esther, here in the Old Testament. And the portion that is recorded here in the book of Esther happened in 483 to 473 BC. It was a 10-year period concerning the marriage of a Jewish girl by the name of Esther to the king himself. And the final years of King Xerxes lasted until 474 up to 465 BC. So in all, 31 years of reign. And he was taken place by his son, who is the son of Vashti, which is now later on has become Artaxerxes, the one famous king in Persia. So the first thought here that I have written about Esther replaces Vashti. Now we have read briefly the story that in chapter 1 it tells about Vashti, the queen, the wife of Xerxes the first. And there was one important party. We don't understand what party was that, but it was a great gathering of nobles and great men in the nation of Assyria. And on the last night of that banquet, the king, the Ahasuerus was already drunk with wine. Hubog na siya ba? And so, naguna-una siya to show the beauty of his queen to his nobles. So, grabe na siya ng story. It's not mentioned in the Bible, but it is implied. That if you show the story, the beauty of the queen, that means you send her in the banquet and then mag-naked siya. So, it's very understandable that if you were Queen Vashti, hubog ang imong bana, emperor siya, ha? And then mag-command siya na, okay, you show your beauty to the nobles. Puro trans na hubog, mga lalaki. Will you do that? So we sympathize with Queen Vashti because she did not do that. Imagine, kalipayan ka lang sa mga nobles na hubog. Ikaw nga very beautiful queen. So it was some kind of disrespect to her, but because it was the command of the king, it cannot be broken. But she refused. And so napahiya si King Ahasuerus before the court and the noblemen. And because of that, they had to make a decision. Because the disobedience of the queen to obey the king was an act that may be imitated by the other wives of the nobles. And the wives will become disobedient to their husbands. So grabe nga problema na to us today. In 2016, di man na problema. For them, 2,400 years ago, problema na siya. And so they had a meeting. If you read the rest of chapter 1 and chapter 2, Vashti was deposed as queen. Bikuha siya nga queen because of that insubordination. But you see, in our time, in defense of the rights of women, para sa ato nga time karon 21st century, correct tong mo, di ba? But you see, in their time, grabe ito siya na sayop sa babae against the emperor of a great nation. And so because of that, sa chapter 1, she was deposed. So di na siya queen. Though later on, the next king was the son of Vashti. So we do not know the rest of the story about her anymore, except that Artaxerxes was, his mother was this particular woman, Vashti. And so for 4 years, lonely ang king. Though he has concubines, but he was lonely because he really loved the queen, Vashti. She must have been a wonderful woman, from the standpoint of the Persian Empire. And so, after 4 years, he was lonely. That's what we read in chapter 2. And so they sought to find a new queen for him. So they gathered all lovely women from all over the kingdom to be candidates to take the place of Vashti as the queen of the Persian Empire. And so we read the story. Every woman was assigned to have a time with the king Ahasuerus. And so after all those women have passed through, and he fell in love with a woman named Esther. So mauna niyang book of Esther. Esther actually was a Jew. She was an orphan. Patay ang iyang father, patay ang iyang mother. And what was left was his uncle Mordecai, who took care of her. And she was a very beautiful girl. She was made one of the candidates for the potential queen of the kingdom. And the Lord, by his grace, made Esther the queen. So, to make the story short. And for us, we cannot understand that, no? Because mura posasyon lang ang babae ba? Kaysa ato, ang babae dapat pangulitawan mo, and then higugmahon mo, and then paayunan mo, and then makuha mo, maging wife mo sa ilaya. So, dili mauna. Mapili lang sila kung kinsa para sa king or for the emperor. Now, when Esther was admitted into the court, the king Ahasuerus chose her and said, "The most wonderful girl I have ever met to be my queen now is Esther." So, sikrito ang iyang nationality nga Jewish di siya. So that leads us to the second point. Mordecai overcomes Haman. So we go now to chapter 2, starting with verse 19, up to chapter 10, chapter 7, verse 10. So ang istorya, nag-init ng istorya, samot ng istorya, because it's a love story na pang prinsipi, pang hari, o pang reyna. Now, Mordecai, pagumangkon niya si Queen Esther. So, naa siya filmi sa gawas of the palace. Medyo spy siya ba? To protect sa niyang pagumangkon. And to protect also the king. It so happened, according to the story here, while he was sitting there, so istorya-istorya mga tao sa King Ahasuerus. In fact, there were two, si Bigthan and Teresh, who planned to have a coup d'etat against King Ahasuerus to kill him. And of course, Mordecai was loyal to the king by virtue of Queen Esther, who is now the wife of King Ahasuerus. And according to chapter 2, verses 21 to 23, he heard about the plot to kill the emperor, and he told it, Gisugit. And so there was an inquisition, that means my case against Bigthan and Teres, that they were approved to be disloyal to the king, and they were hanged. So very cruel during the time, no? Death by hanging for all those who are disloyal to the king. And so, chapter 3 now opens to us another name, another man by the name of Haman, Haman. Who was Haman? He was a prominent personality there in the kingdom. And in that particular chapter, he was promoted in a high position. We do not know what really was the high position. Was he prime minister? Or was he one of the secretaries of an important department there in government? We do not know. But Haman was promoted. And according to history, when you read the commentary, Haman was a descendant of the Agagite. Now, it's a very strange name, Agagite, but it's related to Amalek, the Amalekites, mentioned in the time of Abraham in Genesis. Amalekites, people who descended from Esau. And so they are not godly people. They are enemies of the descendants of Isaac and Abraham, as you read in 1 Samuel chapter 15. So all those notes I have put there, which later on you could check. And it so happened that every time Haman would pass by the place where Mordecai was sitting there, in front of the palace of the queen, you know, Mordecai will not bow to Haman. Haman demands that all people there would bow down to him because he was a chief officer in the kingdom of Ahasuerus. So sa ko kayo si Haman, who is this Mordecai that he will not obey me? Who was Mordecai? He was a Jew. So nasukog din siya kay mga tanan nga mga Hudyo di magbow down sa iyahan ni Haman. And so as a high minister, he made a law. Naghimo siya sa kasuguan. Not on this particular day, all people who are disobedient to the law of the king, all the people of the kingdom will have the right to slay them. So the date was chosen March 13, 473 BC, according to his request from his gods. The best date would be March 13, 473 BC, to kill all enemies of Haman who are also not loyal to the king. Actually, these enemies were Jews, mga Hudyo. So problema ni siya. Nga naman, because si Esther, the queen, Jew, though nobody knew except Mordecai that Esther was a Jew. And so chapter 4, see, Mordecai did not change his clothes. He put dirt on his hair and dirt on his raiment, and it was informed to Queen Esther that this is what happened to his uncle. And so Esther called him and asked him why. And so Mordecai said there is a law against the Jews that on this particular day, March 13, 473 BC, they will all be slain because they are enemies of the state and they are not cooperative to the projects of Haman, Minister Haman, and of the kingdom. And so Mordecai went to Esther, according to the Bible here, and convinced Esther God has put her as queen of the kingdom for this particular reason. And so he had to convince Queen Esther to do something. But the problem was, si Queen Esther, di siya kasundo dito sa kay King Ahasuerus. Unless, ipatawag siya ni King Ahasuerus. Di pwede. Otherwise, kung magkatuto siya, kamasuko ang king, patay na yun siya. But if the king would extend his royal scepter, so pwede siya maka-approach sa kay King Ahasuerus. And so Mordecai and Esther requested all the Jews. So this is what we read here in Esther chapter 5. And we read particularly in verse 12, moreover, Haman, it says here, Haman said here, beside Queen Esther, invited no one, because the only way that Esther could do something to protect her people was to make an important decision, to have a meeting with the king and tell him about the traitorous deed of Haman. Now, this one particular verse I would like to read to you in Esther chapter 4, verse 15. Esther told them to reply to Mordecai, the ladies in waiting of the queen. Go and gather all the Jews who are present in Shushan. Shushan is the city of the kingdom. And fast for me, neither eat nor drink for 3 days, night or day. My maid and I will fast likewise. And so I will go to the king, which is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. So this is a very important verse in the book of Esther, chapter 4, verse 16. Okay, these are words from a very brave king, no? Very brave woman. Ingon niya, patay kung patay, no? If I perish, I perish. But I have to plead with the king concerning my people. So that is another story. And so in chapter 6, the night before that banquet of Queen Esther, in connection with the plot of Haman, Mordecai could not sleep. Hindi siya katulog. Why? Because God saw to it na he cannot sleep that night. And in order to, at least to, mind his thoughts, he asked and called for his secretary to get the records of the king in chapter 6. And it so happened that as they were reading, it was the record of the happenings in the palace of the king. And in that record was the writing about the man named Mordecai, who reported the traitors against the king, and the traitors were judged. And then nahibulong ang king. Because there was no reward given to this man Mordecai. So that's the reason why he could not sleep that night. It was God who arranged him not to be able to sleep. And so naglibog si King Ahasuerus. And then he called Haman, his assistant. He said, "What should be done to the man who has done a great thing for the king?" So Haman thought, "Oh, ako na ni. I will be rewarded." He did not know that it was Mordecai. So the king said, "Okay, now what will we do?" He said, "We will dress him with the robe of the king, and we will put him in the horse of the king, and then the king's highest minister will lead him around the city, and then will announce to people, 'Bow to this man, because he's an honorable man, and God wants to honor him.'" So Haman thought, "Tingali ako na." And so that's why Haman said all those words, and then the king said to Haman, "Okay." He said, "You go to Mordecai and do it to him tomorrow morning." And that is exactly what he did. Wala siya mahimo. Okay. The man he wanted to kill on that particular day, on the date of March 13, 473 BC, was the man now being honored by the king. And then he commanded everyone along the way, "You bow down to this man because this man has done a great thing for the king." And so that was a funny. There's a kind of humor here in Queen Esther's story, that the man who wanted to destroy them was the man who was punished instead. And it so happened in a very funny way, no? I think in literature they call it poetic justice, no? Poetic justice. It's a very very nice way of making it equal with the enemy who wanted to destroy another. Poetic justice that God has allowed to happen to the man Haman and to Mordecai himself. And so, to continue, so Haman went home, and he was very angry, and then he was very sad. He could no longer slay Mordecai because he was honored. In fact, just before this, Haman built a big gallows in his house, in his compound, because he said on this particular date, on March 13, 473 BC, I will hang my enemy Mordecai right here in the gallows in the garden of my house. And so, when Haman, after going around to honor Mordecai, he went home, and he was very, very sad. He was very, very angry. But before he was ready, the officers already gathered, because it was already the day to judge all the Jews. And on that particular day, the Jews were given the right by the king to defend themselves. And on that particular day, the Jews went to have Haman arrested. And they reported to the king about what Haman did. And they said, Haman reserved the gallows for the slaying of his enemy, especially Mordecai. And the king commanded, okay, hang him there, right there, in what he has built to kill Mordecai. So that was the fall of Haman in Esther chapter 6, and after chapter 7, verse 10, the beautiful story. Verse 10, chapter 7, so they hung Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then the king's wrath subsided. So, as we look back, 3,400 years ago, lisod, no? Kay kung hari ka, ang imong law, once na approve na, hindi mo na mausap. Mura hari ka, pero dili ka hari. Kay isklabo ka sa imong law. Maayo lang kay, it was good that the Lord, saved Mordecai and the king himself from great shame. And so, Esther saved the Jews, and the Jews were empowered. Okay, you arm yourselves. Anybody who comes to kill you, you kill them. That was the order of the Emperor Ahasuerus to all the Jews in that particular day. And it was a great slaughter of all the enemies of the Jews in the kingdom of King Ahasuerus, or King Xerxes the first. So instead of destruction of the Jews, it was salvation for them. This is the story of the book of Esther. Now the last point that we'll start with chapter 8, I wrote here. Israel survives Haman's genocidal attempt. So to kill a people is genocide. Genocide, like the attempt of Hitler during World War II to kill all Jews, diba? Another genocide. So see, Haman was like modern Hitler. So many times in history, Satan arranged for the death of the Jews. But all the time the Jews survived. In this particular day, it was Queen Esther. Ahead of time was prepared by God to save his people from destruction in the world. And so according to chapter 8, Esther and Mordecai became more powerful and advanced in power in the kingdom of King Ahasuerus. And they were granted the power to defend themselves from all other enemies. And the Jews were victorious. We read chapter 9, we will not read that anymore, but thousands upon thousands is recorded here of their enemies were killed. So, Esther chapter 9, verse 16, let me read this to you. The remainder of the Jews in the king's province gathered together and protected their lives and had rest from their enemies and killed 75,000 of their enemies, but they did not lay a hand on the plunder. This was on the 13th day of the month of Adar, and on the 14th of the month they rested and made it a day of feasting and gladness. And so that's history. Now today in Israel itself, they have the Jews have that particular day made into a special day. This is in Jewish history, and here mentioned in the Bible in Esther chapter 9 verse 18. It is the feast of Purim. The feast of Purim. What is feast here is all about? This is held on that particular day that was designated by Haman. March, April, February, March, every year in the 13th and 14th day of that particular month. February, March, the feast of the Purim, and they celebrate again the victory of Queen Esther that was given by God. And so, according to chapter 10, it's now mentioned that Mordecai's family became promoted in the kingdom of King Ahasuerus, and they became successful people, the Jews. So, with that, I end the story and the book of Esther. If you want to study it some more, you can read it yourself. But here are important lessons I want to share with us that we will apply to our own lives. Number one, a family that kept its value in the face of extreme testing. That's the family of the Jews, or the family of Mordecai and Queen Esther. Kept its values in the face of extreme testing. So today, as Christians, we have values, no? Values of love, values of service, values of forgiveness, values of diligence. Do we continue to have these values in our lives today, so that in the face of trials and difficulties of our times, we keep our values as Christians, Christian Baptists right here in Cebu, or in the Philippines, or in the world? Number two, a family that used its opportunities to promote God's glory and advance itself. So the family of Mordecai and Esther, they had opportunities. And what did they use the opportunities for? To promote the glory of God. So just to remind us, how about we? Ang atong mga family, are we using all our opportunities today to glorify God in our lives? Number three, a family that obeyed God's will and assured its place in history. So today, in Israel, and even as a story in the whole world to imitate the story of the feast of the Purim is celebrated, so that everyone will know of the great salvation that the Lord can give to people who trust Him. On one condition, we have to obey God's will, and we have to follow what He wants us to do. And the Lord will honor us, and will have an important place in history. Someday, not as Jews, we are not Jews, we are Gentiles, we are Filipinos, particularly, and we will have our part someday to be given honor in eternity by God for all Filipino Christians. Members, for example, of GBC of Mandaue, who are faithful in serving the Lord in the midst of difficult times of the last days. So this is the challenge from the life of Esther and Mordecai, and from the challenge of the story written in the book of Esther. So have you read the book of Esther before? If you have not, you go back this week, you read it again. And remember what I have preached to you tonight. And you see how God is faithful to His people if they are faithful to Him and obey Him in all things. So this is our unchanging family values. And what is that? Our family must always be the family of God. Our family must always be a family that obeys God and serves Him and does His will. It never changes until the end. And remember, as I told you this morning, God, will reward and give us, His glory. Someday, though, He will give us individually. But God is also very particular with families. And so, when He blesses us as we are faithful to Him, He will bless us as families. So maybe your family now, you say, Pastor, di niya bless na ako family how? Tingali, bas hindi ka po faithful like Mordecai or Esther or any other family that's being told here in the Bible. Tingali, wala ka po blessing. But the Lord wants us that as a family of God, part of His family for eternity, we have to stick to Him and obey Him so that we will be blessed for always. So this is another unchanging family value that is being told in the Bible. Do you have this kind of unchanging family value in your family? So you challenge yourself, your father, your mother, your siblings, your sister, your brother. Let's, as a family, be faithful to the Lord always. Shall we pray? Father, thank you for this beautiful story of Esther and Mordecai. So teach us to be loyal to you, and in these last days, always follow what you want us to do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Pastor. It's now time for us to listen to the chorus we sing in the arms of sweet deliverance.